everybody to this exciting webinar. We are really glad you're here. I'm going to start off by introducing myself. I'm Allison Nissen, co-founder of Revel Coach, and with my beautiful friends here, we have Petra, Emily, Lisa, Rashida, and I would like you all just to introduce yourselves. Petra, could you go ahead and kick us off?
Oh my gosh, Allison, thank you so much. I feel like I'm hanging out with my best friends and then our new best friends who are joining us. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Petra Krebs. I am known as the Strengths Strategist, but really consider myself a people and team builder. Just a quick synopsis of my career. I've been a team and people builder for over 2 decades. So we're talking about engagement today, igniting teams, and breaking down some barriers to that. And I feel like I've been doing that for 2 decades. I started as a teacher with kiddos, and then fell into corporate training, started my own direct sales company where I led a team of 250 entrepreneurs. And after that, back into the corporate leadership role. And now here, owning my own coaching and consulting business and getting to partner with amazing teams like Revel Coach. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Nice to meet you.
And Rakshita, could you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm Rakshita Jagdish as an executive coach and a cultural architect. I'm passionate about helping leaders navigate complexities of our increasingly global workforce. My career has been for 14 years in the global HR roles, have given me firsthand experience navigating and helping the collaboration among different countries and employees. So we all know that world is more interconnected than ever. So the real challenge is to move beyond simply working alongside people from different cultures and to work effectively with them. That's where the magic happens. So when I partnered with Revel Coach, that was my passion to lead the global workforce. That's what's my mastermind. When diverse perspectives come together, fueled by respect and curiosity. My passion lies in helping leaders create an environment where people feel heard, seen, and valued for their unique contributions. And the cultural differences aren't just tolerated, but celebrated as a source of strength. Leading global workforce is a journey for me. I myself have, relocated multiple times and lived in different countries. So this has been incredible journey for me when we can foster understanding, bridge gaps, and build a shared purpose through Revel Coach that transcend borders. That's why I'm thrilled to be leading the mastermind and where we can learn and grow. And I'm truly looking forward to today's discussion.
Awesome. And Emily, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi. Thank you guys so much for joining us this beautiful Friday. I'm Emily. I am based usually in Denver, Colorado. I am a community builder and networking strategist, and I am just passionate about making the world a smaller place through intentional connections and introductions. I'm also really passionate about motherhood, and as business owners and corporate individuals, taking a maternity leave and implementing the boundaries, the prep work to take a maternity leave with confidence where you can actually savor the time with your little kiddo. One of my biggest desires when I was in the corporate world was to be on maternity leave. And yet when I became an entrepreneur, the question I always asked myself was, is it still possible? And so with my first son, I was able to build a 3-month maternity leave, and I love inspiring and teaching individuals to do the same thing.
Amazing. And Lisa.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here amongst all this talent. I love learning more about you ladies and everyone who's joining the event. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We definitely want to make sure you get some value. I like to call myself a rehabilitated news producer. That's where I started my career in the media industry and realized that it was a lot more in it than involved than what I thought. So I got into the corporate space where often I saw places where I was the only person who looked like myself. And that really helped me fuel my passion for DEIB. I am biracial. My mother is from South Korea. My father is African American. So I feel like I live DEIB. And going into the corporate spaces, having a career in many different areas, I realized when people can relate and see themselves, it really helps to flourish. And now here we are decades later and have so much data and analytics that prove that passion. So it really has helped me fueled the cause of spreading more DEIB and helping people to realize that everyone has a seat at the table, and inclusion is not about exclusion. Wherever you're walking life, you matter, and you should be able to share your story. And that's what really helps people to level up in workplaces. So that's my passion. I'm glad to be here and can't wait to hear all the great feedback from everyone's mastermind as well.
This is so much fun. I am so glad that I've been able to introduce everybody. I want to go ahead and give a little bit more information about me. I am a story strategist, and what I love to do most is help people bring their words to life. At the moment, I am starting a Write Your Book Now mastermind, and the reason I am starting this one is because as a writer and as a ghostwriter, so many people come to me and voice their opinion. I want to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. And did you know that out of the 80% of the population say they would like to write a book, only 3% of the people actually finish the book that they dream about writing. So my goal is to help the rest of the people that want to write a book bring their words to life. But this particular panel, we are all about helping people become engaged in the workplace, right? We want to be the disruptor of disengagement. We actually want to bring engagement back. And I am so glad that I can actually be the unexpected moderator for this panel. We all have moments in time where we are asked to step up, and I am more than happy to do that. And I'm going to start by asking some questions. And I'm going to start with you, Lisa. Can you tell me, what is disengagement? And what are some things that people can do to re-engage in the workplace?
Thank you so much, Allison. I tell you, disengagement, I love how you said, let's be the disruptor of disengagement. I would say most of us go to our jobs, our professions, we want to win, we want to do our best. But disengagement, also known as quiet quitting, is when you go into a space and for whatever reason, you just don't feel valued. You don't feel like you're being recognized. Sometimes a kind word that doesn't cost a dime can really promote people to dig deeper, go further. And it's something that as leaders, you can't necessarily account for every single thing and every, you have a job to be done. So it's like, you can't sit and it's not coddling people. I think some people think, oh, well, you're coming here, you're getting your paycheck. What else do you want to be engaged? But it's a choice. And especially with some of the newer generations, they're really big about purpose and feeling like there is a sense. People want to go home and feel good about what they're doing. You spend a majority of your day in whatever your professional career is. So disengagement is when someone's just like, I'm just doing the minimum. I'm just checking the box. Where more engaged employees are going to say, okay, what can I do to go above and beyond? And engagement, there's all types of levels in every industry, right? I mean, if you are a barista and if you decide, you know what, there's trash on the ground, I take pride, like thinking like an owner. Where if you're a solopreneur, going that extra step to network and meet other solopreneurs so that you can have that community. So definitely, I would say disengagement is when you are just doing the bare minimum and then you're ready to go home.
And Rakshita, can you add to that?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. So when we have disengagement, I just feel it's like a silent drain on our teams. And then unless until it's definitely not a permanent state. We can all first, if it's an individual, I would always say like look inward. That's where it starts. Like Lisa was saying, like I'm here, but then you just move with like how the day goes, or you have a choice to look inward and see like, is it a challenge? Is it a connection? Is there a purpose, or is something else that's been missing? Asking those questions for yourself, and then pinpoint what energizes you, and then bring what you can bring more. What are the other ways that you can be engaged in? Even the small shifts, like taking on a new project, and rearranging your workspace, or talking to a colleague, going out for coffee or something that energizes you to just pick you from that feeling as an individual. And for leaders, I would say like it's more crucial as a leader to identify if there is a disengagement, and for that to be looked into, then you have to truly listen. That's your first step to anything. So having that open conversation, what your team member is struggling with, and what are their aspirations? Are you tuned into those? And then like foster the camaraderie. It's not just the individual picking like I'm disengaged, but the leaders picking, like creating that opportunities for the team to connect, celebrating the milestones. Yes, since it's a global team and you're hybrid and remote is such a huge thing, then offer virtual chats, coffee chats. What are you gathering around? Empowering ownership, like really ask them to take the ownership, and how do they want to deliver this project? So deliver the work that they take. Show appreciation, encourage growth. I would say those are some of the things that leaders can really pick on and really empower your team, and feel valued and empowered and excited about the work and the team that they're part of.
That's so true. It's so true. And taking ownership, being part of a team. They Forbes recently did a study with about masterminds and mastermind participants, and that there is an increase in revenue and personal growth when people participate in masterminds. Emily, can you talk a little bit about masterminds and how that helps employee engagement?
Yes, I am a super fan of masterminds, and I think masterminds are incredible for multiple reasons. One, it's an opportunity for personal development and growth, but two, while there is one facilitator, it allows all participants to be an expert and contribute their expertise and their advice or their recommendations to the group. So unlike other group coaching programs, I often find people's eyes start glazing over. But since each person is in a way their own little mini coach, it allows them to be more engaged, more active, and more participatory, especially since they're able to share their own learnings and help other people grow and evolve from the learnings that they share.
I agree, absolutely. Masterminds are such an easy way to show up, but the value is more than just the actual physical attention to something. It's that personal growth, because you're able to think beyond your own questions and then respond to somebody else that may be in a similar situation, but because they're talking about their own problems and their own solutions, you are able to have an extra set of eyes, an extra set of ears, additional input, and that is how we all grow. And
Completely.
And Petra, how would you continue that growth? What would you recommend?
Oh my gosh, so much goodness here. So I love the mastermind concept as well. Obviously, this is why we're here and gathering people, because that collaboration that happens. And for leaders, I love that Rakshita talked about leadership. Gallup, being a Gallup strengths coach, I get a lot of data. And the biggest data we find is 70% of our team's engagement and culture is determined by the leader. So for a leader to put themselves in a mastermind is so important. It's almost, necessary. And many of leaders can't do that in their own organization. So going outside the organization to put yourself in a room with other leaders that have similar experiences, similar expertise, or looking for a similar challenge to be overcome is really what raises the bar for your leadership, for your team. I mean, if again, 70% of our team's culture is determined by the leader. And I'm so, excited about just knowing yourself, right? So about assessments, having the strengths assessment available. I think it's a big tool for engagement. But when you're in a mastermind, you are in a room full of people who all have diverse views and talents. And it's an opportunity for you to tap into those talents that may not be natural for you. It gives you a lens on an opportunity in your business, in your team, for your self-growth that you may not be seeing. And it's a vulnerable, authentic place to come to really do that work within yourself. I've heard it said here earlier, right? It starts with us. It all starts with us and trickles out into the teams and the people we serve in our families. And so having a safe place to come to grow is important.
Growth is always the goal. And if it's not the goal, then it's time to get out, right? So we want to continue growing. And that requires us to look to the future, look over the horizon and see what's new, if there's any new trends. And Lisa, are there any new trends, particularly in the DEIB space?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, well, not necessarily new trends because there's not much new under the sun, but I would say just more intentionality. I think things are becoming on the forefront more. One thing I have noticed is DEIB is not just what you see with your physical eyes, but the things you can't see. So neurodivergent behaviors and the way that people show up, the way that people learn and process is another big, I guess you would say, trend in diversity and inclusion, because there are a lot of individuals who have severe anxiety, social anxiety. My son is on the spectrum and he processes things differently. And so in leadership, being more intentional to understand that everyone doesn't respond the way you do. There are some individuals, I love Petra with your strengths coach and understanding yourself. I am a wooer and positivity. And when people are a lot more introspective and quiet, I used to take it as standoffish or snotty and stuck up, but it's not. And being able to foster that curiosity and really be more empathetic for people and taking a pause before you judge or think that someone just because they don't respond to you. And that is a big thing when it comes to diversity and inclusion and making everyone feel like they have the space to process things, right? Maybe in a meeting, you're not going to respond right away. Maybe you'll have a scowl on your face to some people, but it's not a scowl. It's like you're really deeply thinking about things. And when other people take that as, oh, they were not engaged or we're not. So being really intentional about DEIB are not just the things you see on the surface, but the things you can't see. I mean, there's a lot of people who are food insecure. You may be at work driving a nice car, but you just don't know financially, social, economically, the things that people are dealing with. A lot of peers in our age group are dealing with children and then aging parents. So you may be stretched thin financially, and just having a lot more empathy for folks, not assuming that there's so many things that we judge, and we have all these unconscious biases, which are fine because everyone has them. So just being more aware about your unconscious bias and being inclusive about the things you can't see in people's life, their social economic status, their mentality are new ways to look at DEIB.
Lisa, that is so true. And I'm so glad you said to remain curious.
Yes.
Because curiosity allows you to go deeper with relationships.
Yes.
And with just about everything in your life, right? Becoming curious is just one of the ways to combat disengagement and remain engaged in what we're doing. Rakshitha, how can you, particularly you with the international background that you have, what can you add about the curiosity conversation?
Well, I
completely resonate with what Lisa was talking about. Leaders, when we are in holding a team, especially in the global environment, curiosity is one, and then intentionality is another one. And the other thing that Lisa mentioned was awareness, right? Like, there are things that you are aware of. There are things that you really think you know, but you really don't know. And that's so true when you're sitting across the country or if you're from a totally different environment and different culture. So I would say like access to different kinds of tools, which is like, it could be like, how does the work schedule work? How does the feedbacks work? How does the communication pattern work? How does the process work, and how do you communicate? How do you put all these teams together to effectively perform? There like a lot, like just like strength assessments. There are a lot of other assessments that's available for the leaders to understand the different cultures, and that creates a lot more awareness. So bringing that awareness eases out a lot of complications, where to Lisa's comment, if somebody is very silent, then you think that they're not interested or they don't want to contribute. But it could be totally different. For example, when you're somebody working from one country, and where the environment and the culture is very outspoken, and you're working with another country which is very one word, you can feel very disengaged. But actually creating that awareness is a totally different platform for you. It just eases out a lot of complications.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could high five you, Rakisha. That was so true.
Thank you. Yay.
So true.
Oh, that is such a great answer. I love the idea that some cultures where they're wordy and other cultures are not. And that just creates such complications, but it's not even just cultures, it's different times of life. And Emily, I know that working particularly with people that are in their, in the season of starting families, right? That is an entirely different type of conversation that people have. What do people need to be aware of when they're thinking about the different stages of life, and particularly creating networks to support yourself?
Well, I'll say two things. From a corporate side, I think it's important to understand what your corporate or your company's maternity or paternity policy is. So often I feel like we're reactive to the situation. We're like, I'm pregnant. Now what? And then they start investigating. But if you really want to be smart about it, start looking at what your policies are now, both for depending on if you're in a partnership, so you can start planning and moving forward accordingly. I think also it's wild to be in a day and age where we're thinking about childcare before we're thinking about conception, but knowing your paternity and your maternity leave, being able to factor in like, when does a child need to be have a babysitter, or have a nanny, or have a daycare person. Like I know there's so many daycares that are taking wait lists like 2 years before you're even thinking about having a child. So it is mind-boggling and wildly competitive at this moment. I think the other thing too is start having conversations with people in terms of community who have taken a maternity or paternity leave in your company. So understanding what they've gone through, are there certain levers or procedures or protocols that they went through? And then building it backwards. So if you're taking maternity or paternity leave, but particularly maternity leave, like, when are you going to communicate that you are with child to your manager? When are you going to start building your plan? So I would start building your plan about 4 months into your pregnancy and start communicating and letting cross-functional teams know. And I think it's challenging, as a lot of us do work remote, that we can probably go our whole maternity or our whole pregnancy forgetting we're even pregnant, or forgetting to communicate to other people what you are going through. So putting a dedicated timeline in place for you to make sure that all cross-functional teams and your team is supported, as well as any direct reports or colleagues, so they're not being left with the brunt of the work. So then you can actually take time and be with your little person. And then again, just back to networking and getting to know people who have gone through something similar and knowing what they wish they had known when they had done it.
You're right. It's a team effort. Maternity and paternity leave is something that for the whole team, it does affect everybody. And if you're truly building on your own strengths, that is beneficial to the team in general. So when somebody is looking at some sort of leave, regardless of what it is, I mean, maternity and paternity leave is a big thing, but a lot of times people just need to take a break, or they have a medical emergency or other family emergencies, and they really do need to lean on the strengths of their entire team. And Petra, what would you recommend? How would people use their strengths in order to create the network and the environment to remain curious and embrace all the cultures of the community?
Thank you, Allison, for asking. I cannot stress enough just this whole conversation, right? It just begins with ourself, knowing ourself, and assessments like StrengthsFinder and the fabulous tool that Revel Coach works with called Cloverleaf, which unlocks other assessments, which will be part of our masterminds as well. Knowing yourself allows you to know others. And when you are self-aware, all of a sudden you become more other aware, because now you're knowing more about your strengths and your weaknesses. And also when your strengths are in overdrive, we talk a lot about well-being and strengths. And when we're talking about engagement of an organization and an engagement of a team, we're talking about a team that has a high level of well-being. So all of the things we're talking about here today, preparing for maternity leave, right? And then the DEIB initiative, the global reach, it's all about creating a organization that thrives on well-being. So knowing ourselves first, that self-awareness, will do a lot of that in the mastermind coming up. But you can do that with assessments. And then also knowing others. When you're speaking a common language, and this is where assessments can be a help, because they're a shortcut to create a common language and a foundation that we are all standing on. So the most significant thing that I have found by using StrengthsFinder or assessments in organizations is that many of us are not even aware of our superpowers. Sometimes we think that the thing we're doing is strange, so we hide it. Well, certainly, I'm sure nobody else is color coding their file cabinet every 10 minutes, right? Or we think that it's just so natural. Well, of course, everyone does this. A teammate to me recently said to me, "You said that as if you said the grass is green." And I'm responding as if I didn't know the grass was green. Because I just was like, well, doesn't everyone know this? We have certain superpowers that we don't even know we possess, because we either, we were embarrassed of them or we don't know. And I could go on and on about that, but it all begins with self-awareness, and an assessment gives you a language to explain who you are. And once you learn who you are and who you're not, you can see the commonalities. Like Lisa was talking about, some of them you can see, some of them you have to look for, you have to get curious. You don't know. It gives you an opportunity to ask the questions, to invite people in, to really engage. And so using assessments gives you a shortcut to use that language. When people know themselves and can collaborate by knowing others, that's when that unity and synergy on a team happens. And I just want to give you some data here that Gallup polls, right? If you don't know Gallup, go to gallup.com. You'll have so much data for the rest of your life. Like, you will never run out of data. And I love it. I'm on webinars every week with Gallup. But I want to just share that this is a huge engagement finding of Gallup. When people know themselves, right? They know their strengths. They are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their role, in their job, whether it's a leader or a team member. You are more engaged when you know what you love to do. And you also have a 6 times higher likelihood of doing what you do best every day, because now you know yourself, you know what you like. And so you're looking for those opportunities. You're looking to work on those projects. And Gallup also says, when you know your strengths, you will have a 3 times higher quality of life. Anybody here? I see Erica, Catherine in the group, right? So Shaitan, anybody here want a higher quality of life, right? Just even for ourselves, but what about for our teams? And so that really elevates that engagement, is knowing your strengths, knowing yourself, and knowing your teammates. And that's when you can start those conversations of synergy. Another thing, Lisa, I want to have piggyback off of what you were saying about what is engagement or what is disengagement. Gallup defines it as engaged, disengaged, and actively disengaged. So I think we also need to be aware, Emily, some of what you were saying, like when somebody leaves on maternity leave, how does that affect me? Am I now all of a sudden living in fear, which makes me actively disengaged? So an engaged person is the person that is 6 times more likely to show up to work happy, 6 times more likely to do what they do best, 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life. The disengaged person might be like the quiet quitting you mentioned, right? Like, oh, we're not really showing up for all the things. But the disengaged person is the person who is living in fear, who is actively looking for another job, who is also slashing the tires maybe in an organization, deliberately feeding negativity into an organization. So we have to be really aware of what level of engagement are we talking about and have our eyes on all of those things. And by knowing your team and knowing yourself, then you're more aware.
Well, that piggybacks really nicely into my question for Rakshitha. How can people avoid the pitfalls when they are working with an international workforce?
Yes.
Well, I think, it goes back to the same conversation that we had. I think creating what Petra said, what Lisa said, and then what Emily said already, it's about, knowing yourself as a leader as well. And I think the best way to do all of this is all that we spoke, truly listen, foster relationships, and encouraging growth, but also the collaboration piece and creating that awareness piece of like, going out and getting that mentoring done, that coaching done as a leader. What is the self-development you're doing continuously, and how are you upskilling yourself? So it's about carrying those awareness piece, and also where do you have to really work further as a leader to avoid that disengagement piece. And for me, my the best I would say is the masterminds or the group sessions or the coaching, and even like the thing about the clover leaf, the daily conversation that happens there for you, and it sends you the tips about yourself and creating that awareness. It just helps you navigate better on the platform in terms of like, how do you navigate with your team? How do you show up as a leader? And how do you show up in a global environment, for example? And for example, if you're known to be, you not everybody likes you on the counterparts at the country on the other side of the country, and then you're in a shock because you were the favorite leader in this country. It always helps to create that awareness. Or getting on these masterminds, for example, maybe you will get to know about the tools that other leaders are using, and the conversations and perspectives that are fresh, that you're not aware of, are some of the things that really creates that engagement piece for you, and also awareness. But apart from that, also like the employee well-being is one of the biggest things that I would say, like what we were discussing earlier, it's just not a buzzword, but it's like really a business imperative, I would say. Like taking care of the mental and physical health of not just yourself, but also offering that flexibility to your team is the one of the disengagement pieces, and making sure that you're tuned in and adding on anything that will help to strengthen your company overall. Those are some of the things I can think of. And also like the flexible work, hybrid, and the remote, the work culture that has just come in. I feel that it's here to stay. And as leaders, we are, expected to go one way or the other, but having understanding about how every team is working and what their comfort zone is, and making sure that their productivity is most important than how many hours that they're working. you know. So focusing on these kind of things, like, I think we really can take care. I think we've added most of it has been covered already.
Well, it's so important. We just don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And when we don't go out and network, meet other people, join masterminds, and stay curious, it is very difficult to learn anything new. If there's anyone that has any questions in the audience, if you could type them in the Q&A, we would love to answer any questions. But in the meanwhile, I'd like to ask Lisa, what's one way that we can, or should I say another way that we might be able to stay engaged in the workforce with our team?
That's a fantastic question, Allison. And I love how every piece of knowledge that each one of the panelists is giving, really, it's all in alignment, right? It's having the self-awareness, starting with knowing yourself. And I think leaders set the weather. So as a leadership team, if you are making sure that everyone does have a strengths finder or a clover leaf or some type of resource just to start, they're going to be better stewards at work. I work for a company, we sell compliance training, and one of our things is we want to help people be less of a jerk at work, right? And that starts by knowing yourself, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that really sets that weather for everyone else to feel more included, to feel psychologically safe. That's so important. And I believe that Rakshita made a comment about you still have to have the work done. Profit is a big deal right now. Operational efficiency is a big buzzword for a lot of companies. You can have that and still be successful if you make sure your people are okay. And I think that the first things first, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your goals are. If you don't have the proper workforce, you're not gonna succeed. So to your point, Allison, making sure that individuals are healthy, having those different available resources, like when Emily was talking about maternity leave, being able to have that security and know, okay, I can move on with my life and have my family grow and go on paternity or maternity leave and not feel isolated, or I'm going to lose my job or retaliate. Or because you know each other's personalities, you understand people's work styles. I love that Cloverleaf interacts with your calendar and lets you know, okay, you're going to be having a meeting with this individual. Here's their work style. Having that self-awareness, having the awareness of others, it just fosters that psychologically safe environment. And that's the bottom line. When people feel that way, they're going to perform higher, they're going to stay engaged, and ultimately your bottom line will improve.
And engagement is so important in the psychological safety part of it. Yeah, that is it sounds all buzzwordy, but it's the idea that we can go into an environment, be ourselves, and have our jazz hands if we want. We can be excited if we want. We can show our true colors, because we'll work best that way as opposed to trying to hide. And I know, Emily, you're the queen of networking. What's one piece of advice people could use to build a stronger network so that they can shine in any environment?
So I love this question because so many people think that they can't talk to people in their past for some reason. Like if there's been a break of communication, that they feel guilty reaching out or re-engaging. So I think it's a big mindset shift for networking, that the world is your oyster and that you want to think positive thoughts about everyone, that people are well-intentioned. And I know this room here is a very positive woo room. And there's this aspect in that people really want to help you. And they want to be that person that makes that connection for you or introduces you to the next job or introduces you to your realtor who you buy your house with. Like, it feels good to be helpful. So I think the big reminder here is to remember to fly your flag. And when someone does ask you, how can I be of assistance? Or how can I help you? Or what is it that you're struggling with right now? Not to back away from that question and be like, I'm all good. It's no worries. Don't bother. don't bother with me. Have something in your back pocket that you can fly. So maybe it's I'm looking for a coach to help me strengthen my career development so I can leapfrog in my career. Or I'm looking to be connected with friends because I just moved to a new city and I know no one and I'm overwhelmed with how to make connections. So have that thing in your back pocket to fly and know that most people have a positive intent and want to be helpful. So don't be scared to ask for help.
Oh, such a great answer. And we have a question that's come in, and this is open to the entire panel. How would you recommend combating disengagement when teams feel overworked due to staffing issues?
I would love to combat that. I would say the first thing I think is transparency from the leadership on why the staffing issues, whether it's a financial shift or whatnot, just because some organizations just don't ask, don't tell, right? We've laid off people, there's a rift, no one talks about it. They don't acknowledge that there is survivor remorse, right? Even though you may not have been laid off, you still have this guilt, you have this uncertainty, you feel really nervous. So having that transparency. And then I also think making individuals feel valued and think like an owner and say, hey, this is a temporary situation. If we can do X, Y, Z, like have very visible goals. And I appreciate everybody putting all hands on deck. We're going to need you to maybe have to do multiple roles, but this is our plan. And if we can get here, then we can hire more help. I think just like Emily said, like when someone's asking you for help and you're like, no, I'm fine, being able to say, no, I need help. And I think as leaders in organizations and shareholders or the board or whatnot, a lot of times they try to keep stuff from employees, but being transparent could be the best superpower. And then from there, people are willing to do more.
Petra, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love that. Lisa, I would just say number one, transparency too, communication. So many times when change management is happening, right? And you have this low staffing issue and people are leaving, or you don't have headcount to hire anybody new. We don't talk about it and we need to communicate it. And a lot of times, even the middle management doesn't know what's coming. Like, I don't know if I'm going to have headcount. I don't know if I'm going to have this. So we pretend like this situation doesn't exist. So vulnerability and authenticity is really important here to say, hey, I know this is hard and I don't have the answer. That's saying I don't have the answer is better than pretending like there's not a question. I always say. And I would say the number one way to combat burnout, whether it's a staffing issue, whether it's a change management issue, whether it's a change in leadership, anything, is to come together as a team and remember your why. Best-selling author John Gordon says, we don't get burnt out because of what we do. We get burnt out because we forget why we do it. So going back to why are we here? Why are we on this team? What is the purpose? Where are we going? And reigniting that why and that passion, because that's the first thing to go. Like we ask ourselves, why am I really here? Well, looking at the evidence, are you serving families? Why are you serving community? Is your product, the best on the market? It's going to save people. So what is your why? And communication.
Love that.
That's great. Rakshita?
Yeah, I like what Petra was saying, and then just remembering the why, but also like just say the way it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Like as leaders, we have the role to play, and don't try to downplay the stress your team is going through. And also looking at it in terms of like prioritize and delegate. Like how do you identify the most important tasks here? And like what projects do we want to deliver first? And like encourage collaboration, encourage cross team collaboration. Who can help you here with the team that we already have? And then be realistic about the expectations. Like what timelines can we deliver this? And like what is realistically accomplished? And what can't we do about what we have right now? And I'm a big advocate as a leader to be the advocate for your own team. and talking to issues and being consistent about you need upper additional resources, and talking to your upper management about how it is impacting the well-being and productivity of your team. That's something that as a leader, that you show up for your team, and then that has a ripple effect. And the rest is all about like, how do we go about handling with what we have.
Love that cross collaboration.
Absolutely. Yes. Cross collaboration and advocation. Advocating for your team is so important. And it's equally important when you advocate for yourself. When you look around and you see who else is on your team, and you remember the values that each person brings, that's your story. That's your message. And when you can work together and understand the value that each person has, that's the best way, in my opinion, to make sure that we stay engaged and that we keep our teams focused and sharp. And I'm going to ask everyone to just give one final statement before we go ahead and sign off and say thank you so much for everybody coming. Petra, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I would just say, from everything I've learned here today, I would say our differences are our advantages. So we need to lean in, we need to cross collaborate, we need to know our people, not being afraid to ask. So our differences really are the advantages in corporations and in our life. And the more curious we get, the stronger we are together.
Wonderful. Emily.
To build on that, I'd say your network is your net worth. And so reminding yourself that everyone that you have connected with in the past is still part of your network, and everyone you're connecting with in the future is helping open doors and expand for you. And in times of maternity leave or in times of personal growth and development, don't be scared to tap your network.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Lisa.
Thanks. I would just love to leave you. I love acronyms with the acronym INCLUDE. And that stands for just having inclusive policies, making sure that you're supporting all types of diversity and inclusion, not just what you see, but what you don't see. So neurodiversity as well. Nurture for the end. So you nurture talent, making sure you have great recruitment. You're doing global recruitment as well as people that you may not necessarily recruit on a normal basis. You also want to have the C and include cultural awareness, just making sure that there's training sessions for people to understand different cultures and how those things can help the organization. The L would be listen actively, right? I know there's an old school saying you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you can listen twice as much as you talk. So definitely listen actively. The U and include would be uniting your teams, fostering team building of love when we talked about cross collaboration, networking within your own team. And I love what you said, Emily, about going back in your history too. Don't feel like you can't network with people. The D would be data-driven decisions. Let the data lie, have a datitude, not based on feeling, but what are the numbers? If you're having really low employee engagement survey results, that data is telling you need to do something different. So look at the data. And then finally, the E and include is empower your teams, have ERGs, employee resource groups, different things, different resources that people can use, do things out in the community, anything that makes your team feel like they can be an owner in your company. And that's going to help you with engagement.
Wonderful. Rakshita.
Well, I think everybody has covered most of it. I think whatever you guys said, I've my takeaway would be big on collaboration today. Everybody emphasizes so much on collaboration. It could be internal teams, it could be cross-cultural teams, it could be leaders outside your company. Collaboration, perspective, and mindset. All of those 3 things, I would say, like either can block you or open doors for you. So it's all about like creating that awareness from the get-go. Either you're a leader or you're an individual contributor at a company. So creating that awareness and where you stand is going to be your path to lead the best way possible, and all the other resources that we spoke about today.
Okay.
And Allison, I'm not letting you off the hook. I want to hear from you too.
Great.
Allison has
Excellent.
been our fabulous moderator, but she has an incredible mastermind coming up that I'm going to be part of. Write Your Book Now. So I want to hear from you, Allison. You're the storyteller. What is the story of engagement that we should be telling to our organizations?
Well, as you can, I don't know if you can hear there's vacuuming going on in my background. It's really cleaning my air vents. I think cleanliness is going to be the theme for my day. But what I was going to leave us with was that I want everyone to on behalf of Revel Coach, to have a vision of where you would like to go, where you want your team to go, and put some action behind that vision. And that means you create a small plan. It can be just one step at a time. It could be a big plan, but with every little part of it, you need to stop and think about how you're growing and changing and evolving. When we grow, we change, we evolve, we are engaged. And sometimes it's hard, but that's when we stop and we look back and we celebrate, because every step that we take on our journey, from the very beginning that we had that initial vision to the actions and the growth, we can celebrate each part of that. And of course, I want everyone to celebrate it with words, because I think words are important, not just the ones we verbalize, but the ones we read. And we think about the messaging that we have. And it can be small things such as a social post, or bigger things, putting your story into a book, your story, because your story is unique. And people want to learn from you. They want to share in your experiences. Writing a book and sharing your experiences is one of the easiest ways to create a connection, not just with your network, but with people outside and beyond. And that is why I love the idea of Write Your Book Now Mastermind. So I am going to pitch my Write Your Book Now Mastermind. And I hope everyone goes to Revel Coach to see all the wonderful things that we are offering. We have the Strengths Mastermind. We have our Maternity Leave Mastermind. We have our DEIB Mastermind. And we have our international mastermind for international engagement. And Revel Coach is the place to be. So I really hope to see everyone there. And again, on behalf of Revel Coach, I am Allison Nissen with my sister Marcy Stout, who unfortunately could not join us with her audio today. We are so glad that you have been here. I want to wish you all a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation.
Fantastic.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye. Have a great day.